Yeah.
No, but it was fine. No, I don't think. I'll share Do you have a pretty agenda right? I can go off of my phone. Mine is yours. I can use my
How are you doing? Yeah, I know. Good folks. Easy to dance to.
I know, I did it to my.
Did you have anything?
I didn't show that. Oh.
Is that?
It was 5 years. Right?
So mine's still connected. Yeah.
I've tried several. Which one do you
Yeah, I think so.
Just look at it.
If we don't have any issues, we're good now. Okay, seeing it's 6:03, we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you would all join me in pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Working through our agenda. I guess I should have done roll call first. We're gonna reorder those. So, Christy?
Here.
Ricardo?
Here.
Crystal?
Here.
Richard?
Here.
Second call for Heidi?
Here.
Thank you. Chair's present, so we have a full slate tonight. We did not receive any public comments submitted prior to the deadline. So I don't believe we have any of those tonight. So moving on to item 2, board communication discussion, and this is a review of all of the things that we're preparing to start up school with. So I'll turn it over to you, Ginger.
According to the Ready Schools Resilient Framework, We are supposed to review this with the board prior to submitting it on August 27th. A team of administrators.
Point of order. Can you, Richard and Heidi, can you hear that? Okay.
Yes,
Richard, can you hear that? Okay.
Yes, I can hear it. Okay, thank you.
I just didn't want to make, I wanted to make sure. Sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay, so we have reviewed the guidance. And Linda asked Jillian to share the host rights so she can get into the screen now. That was a segment. Okay, so we reviewed, the administrative team has begun to develop this plan. This is the initial framework that we will submit on the 27th. It is in its draft form. We still need to get additional feedback. And we have posted this on the website so everyone can look at it thoroughly and in detail. The first thing that it says is it highlights local decision making, that in general, the Resiliency Framework states that decisions regarding school health and safety reside with school and district officials. Local health, public health authorities are vital partners and advise and consult on health and safety procedures. Except where compliance is mandated by existing state law, the Resiliency Framework is advisory. Where the framework does not require specific action by a school district, a district may choose whether to consider or implement advisory information or recommendations. So our framework follows the requirements that we must fulfill, including the students wearing masks at school, students, staff, volunteers, contractors, visitors. Staff must be vaccinated, and it also allows for exceptions, exemptions based on a specific health need and religious objection and things like that. There are exceptions, so it's not a 100%. There is some latitude. However, the general rule is in order to keep kids in school for as long as possible without interruptions, everyone wears masks when they're in school indoors, and as many people vaccinated as possible helps. And then there are other things like ventilation, hand sanitizers, social distancing, that many of the protocols that we used last year are included in this.
Ginger, can I ask a question, or are you rather hold it?
No, go ahead.
Have we received the formal requirements from OHA regarding the teacher vaccines?
We have not received the final guidance. We've been advised that it's coming, but we haven't received the official document from.
So are we gonna revise our resiliency to reflect what that state?
Yes,
Because I heard you mention it, but I know that we haven't seen anything.
yes, and
Right.
and that's an important fact to remember, is the Oregon Health Authority is the final decision body. The local health authority are the people connected to that stream of information that tell us how we have to implement the guidelines in schools. So if they change a quarantine period, we have to follow whatever they tell us we must do. So information is coming. It hasn't arrived yet. We're looking forward to seeing it. We do know that the Pfizer vaccine was approved for full use. So the timeline of October, I think it was 16th, I can't remember the date. 18th, thank you. That timeline is set. But again, I haven't seen the guidance yet, so I want to wait until I see it before we finalize it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Health and safety. It's important to remember that returning all students to full-time in-person instruction is a priority. Our communities will be living with the virus until there is widespread immunity. COVID-19 continues to change with new variants. Our knowledge of mitigation efforts grows over time. For these reasons, the guidance for responding to COVID-19 also changes. Currently, the best practices as recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, Oregon Health Authority, and Marion County Health Department for protecting individuals from COVID-19 are vaccination for those eligible, physical distancing, face coverings, ventilation and airflow, hand hygiene, and staying home if ill or exposed to someone with COVID-19. Opportunity for transmission decreases with each mitigation effort that is implemented. So we go on and we talk about equity and our guiding principles. North Marion School District is committed to promoting educational systems that support every child's identity, health, and well-being, strengths, and needs. North Marion School District makes every effort to apply an equity-informed lens across all sections of its operational plans. And then the next categories are ensuring safety and wellness, cultivating connection and relationship, prioritizing equity, and innovation. And I could go on for hours about this, but the most important things to know is that we are building on what we learned last year. We are focusing our efforts on returning kids to school full-time and keeping them here as long as possible by being diligent about the things that we know will keep kids in school. When kids return, we are focusing on reconnecting them to each other, to their teachers, and to the community so that they feel welcome, safe, comfortable, learn new routines for dealing with masks, learn how to be friends, all of the things that they haven't had time to do, engaging in after-school activities where possible and beginning to live that life again of being a student. So that's part of our, there's a multitude of continuity of service plans, accommodations, appropriate accommodations for children, ensuring that kids attend. One of the changes from last year where attendance was counted differently, we were not allowed to remove a student from the roster if they were absent for 10 days and we weren't able to get hold of them. This year, we're required to do that. So that will cause us to be much more dynamic in our approach to make sure that children are attending school. And if not, that we go out to find out what's going on and try to get them back to school.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Certainly.
So say a child's gonna be gone on vacation for 10 days with their parent. They're not automatically, like, that'll still be able to be prearranged, correct?
Correct. If they come back on that 11th day, we'll be good to go.
Okay. So say it's like 12 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you planning ahead? Okay. And the cleaning protocols, district facilities will be cleaned, sanitized, and disinfected daily using district sanctioned and approved products and procedures for COVID-19. We learned a great deal about that last year, so we are really good at it. That will continue. There's information about cohorting. Cohorting refers to the establishment of a consistent grouping of students that stays together for a significant portion of the school day. This mitigation strategy helps to minimize the number of close contacts in an exposure event between students and staff by intentionally limiting the possible numbers of interactions students may experience during the day. Cohorting will be a strategy implemented by the North Marion School District when conditions warrant elevating the mitigation strategies due to increased prevalence of community and in-school transmission of COVID-19 cases. In the event that we would need to elevate our cohorting strategies, students would not be placed into full-time cohort groups based on any demographic or disability criteria. For example, students with complex medical needs, students with IEPs, students receiving language services, etc. Students will not be cohorted that way. Schools may consider creating small groups within cohorts around skills and instructional needs.
I'm sorry, you just let me know if you don't want me to ask questions in the middle. But we're not cohorting based off of vaccination or mask status, correct? Okay, I just want to make sure that we state that. Thank you.
Contact tracing, we will Encourage staff and families to notify the school if they or their student have symptoms of COVID-19, a positive test, or were exposed to someone with COVID-19 within the past 14 days. Per HIPAA guidelines, North Marion School District will maintain privacy and confidentiality. Students, teachers, and staff who have symptoms of infectious illnesses such as influenza or COVID-19 should stay home and be referred to their healthcare provider for testing and care. North Marion School District will alert families if their student has been identified to have had prolonged contact with a positive case.
Can I ask a question on that? So if parents have within a classroom, it is only the way we're working now, the student who potentially could have been at risk is going to be the only one contacted out of the classroom if there is somebody who tests positive. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and it's there's a great graphic that shows that if someone sitting in the middle of two kids is wearing a mask and is COVID positive and is sitting the same distance from those chairs 3 feet apart from two other students who are wearing masks, if the student in the middle is test positive, it has no impact on the kid sitting next to them.
Yeah. I know you discussed that. I was just, I'm trying to, you know what I mean, logistically figure out how, you know what I mean, if parents get calls, you know, what that might look like and kind of the protocols that we could go through. And so
Just to follow up on Glenn, so let me see how to word this. So if they have siblings within the school district and they have a positive COVID and they live together, how are we handling that? That's something I hadn't thought about before.
Well, it's probably similar to how we did it last year. If there's a positive case in the house, then usually there's a short time period that you wait to see if the students become symptomatic. What most families do is to take the children and separate them at that point to minimize the chance that a student that hasn't been exposed will not be exposed. A lot of symptoms are shown. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So if we can just make sure that's clearly in there,
Yes.
because that's something that I thought of. The other thing is, the length of quarantine has changed multiple times. What's the current, do you know what the current length is right now?
I
Because
have
I've
not
heard,
received the final guidance from
because it's
local
changed.
health authority.
Okay.
And they are the ones that will determine what the quarantine is. And because I know from county to county, sometimes it's a little bit different. So whatever they tell us, that's what we have to do.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if we got the final word.
No.
So can we go back a second to cohorting? What does that actually look like in practice? I mean, I have the primary school. What does that actually look like in a classroom of 25?
It looks like a classroom of 25.
That is a cohort.
Well, that is the main group with which that student travels most of the day.
Okay.
So it would be the main cohort.
And does that impact bus route, cohorting? Does that, I mean, all of that, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
So,
question.
I mean, there's the classroom cohort, but then you're talking about transportation.
Yeah, being on a bus is considered a cohort as well. If there's an exposure on the bus, that can be a cohort. Now, again, with the masks, if students are masked up for a short period of time on a bus, then that may not count as an exposure. You could be sitting next to someone, and if you take a short ride, you're wearing a mask, they're wearing a mask, they're positive, you're not impacted.
Yeah, so the rules are a lot different from last year to this year when you put them next to each other. Where last year, like if you were within any distance, like 6 feet or anything within anyone, then you were marked and you were quarantined.
Right.
Now you have to fit into this whole bucketed category. If you have masks, you have 3 feet, if you're this, if you're that, and then if you meet all of those criteria, then you qualify for quarantine at the
Right.
bottom.
So
So
I understand that. I'm
it's
just
just a
saying
lot
that
different.
the term cohorting to me doesn't sound like
Yeah. Not the
what
same.
we are
Yeah.
actually doing. Our cohort is the class size in most instances.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different at the secondary level. Like
Right.
at the middle school, they cohorted by pods. So they had students that would travel
Right,
as a group to 4 different classrooms.
right.
So that cohort
Do you
was a
know
little,
what document she's reading off of?
This year?
Yes,
Okay.
no,
Indiana?
not by pods, no. We are cohorting by grade level. So as students enter into the school, we're gonna have different areas for them to begin to stage. We're trying to use our facility and cohort to the best extent possible, which is how we read the language. And so what we have chosen to do is to try to increase mobility within the hallways. So we're not going to be assigning lockers this year. We're going to have directional markers on the floor. After they eat breakfast, they go straight to class. They are in grade levels predominantly throughout the day. So they will be passing each other in the hallways. At lunchtime, we will cohort by grade level. When you see 7 different teachers in a day, you cannot do like the elementary.
Right.
So we're cohorting, and we're going to use that roll call as our contact tracing. So in case something does happen, but really it comes back to exactly what we're talking about. There's a lot of metrics that have to be met, and we believe that we can meet all of those safely to avoid any kind of large scale need for quarantine.
So then what are you gonna do about locker situation?
Backpacks, just like last year. Last spring, we had kids carrying their items to classes with them. So that's what we're gonna continue with that pattern this year. And the other part of that, what it does for us, when we went out on March 13th, 2020, we thought we were coming back in 2 weeks. So much stuff got left behind and rotted or disappeared. This will keep that from happening, as well as we're giving every student a one-on-one computer. So just in case we do come to, heaven forbid, any kind of wide scale exodus from the school, we'll have all the materials that kids need to be able to go online remotely and continue learning without missing a beat.
I have a question. What are the possibilities to have the teachers travel instead of the kids?
Again, when hopefully we're gonna have, our similar attendance as usual. I mean, in my time here, this is going into my 8th year. Last year, we were at about 420. Typically, we've been around 465 in terms of enrollment. I'm hopeful to be above 420 again this year. We have registration this week, so we'll have those numbers pretty solidified by the end of the week.
Dave, let me clarify. So he's wanting to know, what about the teachers moving from classroom to classroom?
Yep, and I'm getting to.
Oh, okay, just checking.
Yeah.
Just
That's
checking.
what I'm trying
I
to
was just making sure we were on the same page.
The dots I'm trying to connect here are the fact that with that many students, we may have been able to shift folks last year.
Mhm.
We were only bringing 130 kids on campus daily. We're
Mhm.
bringing 420 plus students on campus. It becomes very challenging, if not impossible. The secondary preacher is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Where we're moving those people around. It can't even happen.
And because they're in grade levels, they're in that pod, and I apologize, that's what I thought you meant. They're in their grade level cohort, and when we discussed the possibility of teachers moving at one point, our leadership team became very concerned about the developmental nature of our children and the needs that especially middle schoolers have to move, to be active, and to do it
I
safely.
didn't see that on the agenda, period.
What our facility has to offer. So say, for example, art.
Is it called Oregon COVID-19 Resiliency something or other?
I got it.
When we look at science, we have some rooms that are specifically set up for science. Not to say that we couldn't be creative and make things happen. We want to offer the most authentic educational experience possible. Our facility is set up to do that in certain ways. If we could start all over and rebuild it, we might have some different design opportunities, but.
I did grow up having the teachers to move to our class. And when we had to go to lab, obviously, we had to go to a lab or any other special place. But for the most time, we were in just one classroom.
Yeah, and again, to speak to Ms. Boddinger's involvement of our leadership, they just felt like it would be in the students' best interest for mental health and other aspects to be able to move around. What I heard Ms. Redlinger said earlier is true. Should we come to a place where we have to reevaluate based on changing circumstances, we may have to come back and cross that bridge. I know that our value system right now places us in a situation where we want to offer kids a sense of normalcy as much as possible.
So is that similar how it's going to be applied in the high school setting?
High school's a lot harder, because we have mixed grades in multiple classes. And so we are gonna look real close on how the cohorting is going to affect. And we have 2 separate lunches. So we're just now starting to design that plan and coming up with assigned areas and stuff for that.
What about lockers at the high school?
Lockers, we are gonna provide lockers if they want them. And they'll be assigned by 5.
So that kind of leads me to believe that they would be allowed to carry backpacks if they decided not to have a locker. Correct. Okay.
I just say the high school is the most challenging.
Yeah.
You know, also because of the content, you know,
Sure.
and because one of the things that's very different this year is that we're having all kids back 5 days a week. Last year, you know, we were cohorted with smaller groups, and we had, you know, only half the kids, if that, back. And you know, the notion of having all the kids back at the secondary level really makes the cohorting a challenge. And it might be like even at the elementary level, one way to think about it is you try to have children in as few cohorts as possible, but our kids will be in multiple cohorts, the bus cohort, the classroom cohort, maybe an intervention cohort.
Right.
But just trying to keep that as limited as possible.
Okay.
Okay, and we've already talked about the masking and the quarantine, but one of the things that I will say is that what's new in this rule that has changed 3 times in the last 2 weeks is the preschool age children masking guidance. So first it was everyone had the mask that was age 2 and up, and then it changed to kids in early learning centers that are not part of a school, regular school building where there are more children, don't have to mask up. And then it changed to in a school setting, in a preschool classroom, children under the age of 5 and under, yeah, I think it's 5 and under, do not have to mask up, except if you're on a bus, then everyone has to mask up. It doesn't matter if you're 2 years old or 5 years old, if you're on a bus, you still have to wear a mask on the bus, but you don't have to wear it in school. So that's evolving, yes.
I had a question on the mask. I've had a couple of parents who say they're having trouble finding smaller masks for kids because they're in short supply. Is that something that parents can expect? I see you've got masks available here at the school, but is that something if parents are truly having issues finding those prior to the school year opening, there will be age appropriate masks for, especially for, I mean, I'm thinking the younger, you know, the primary and the intermediate schools.
Yes, and that's one of the things that Agnes is looking to make sure that we have. We have a lot of supplies that we were fortunate not to use all the supplies that we've stockpiled. So we are going through and assessing what's needed and finding materials. I happen to have found some masks that show your face. So that you're fully masked, you wear a defogger, and the kids can see you and you can talk. So I'm trying to find as many of those and see if staff are interested in using them. They're more expensive, but if you get a couple and you wash them and take care of them, they last a long time. And they have those in children's sizes as well. So they can see each other. They could be cost prohibitive if we bought them for everyone, but at least it's the model that we're trying to find, and hopefully we'll find a reasonable priced resource to get them on a mass scale.
Okay, can I ask a tough question? What are we gonna do? Of course I am. But what are we gonna do for the kindergarten classes that are mostly 5 years old, but you have a few 6-year-olds in there?
It's by age, but it's
Right.
also by class, so
So we need to think about
we need
that.
to think about that. It seems like the logical thing would be to default to which decision is going to ensure that kids are most safe, and that would be masking. In the kindergarten.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we have that clearly communicated with the, with whatever
Yes,
building and that is decided.
yeah, preschool, the assumptive age is 5,
Mhm.
kindergarten, the assumptive age is 6. So that's how the model is, the general model is done. Would it be nice that all children were born in the right time instead of always happen?
Right.
So is it possible that in the elementary and intermediate, the teachers and the staff wear clear masks? Because I think it's very important for the kids.
Is that something that's a board that we can request?
Oh, we're already looking at buying it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've chatted some before about this, and it may be a logistical thing. The supply chain thing,
Right,
you
right.
know,
supply
if they're
chain.
not available, they're not available, if we can get a hold of them,
Yes.
you know, it's important.
Yes, and I wanted to get input from the principals as well about how many things, so they're giving me their feedback. And then when not, now there's information about the guidance about when masks are not required indoors, so that's included as well. When sleeping, I don't know how many kids. I mean, we have wellness rooms now, so I'm assuming.
Might be offering now.
Yeah. Actively eating, drinking, engage in activity that makes wearing a mask, face covering, or face shield not feasible, such as when you're swimming. In a private individual workspace, meaning in an indoor space with public or private workspace used for work by one individual at a time, that is enclosed on all sides with walls from floor to ceiling and with a closed door. Or if you must remove the mask, face covering, or face shield briefly because the individual's identity needs to be confirmed, or is practicing or playing a competitive sport at any level or performing, including but not limited to music, delivering a speech to an audience in theater. So the guidance is in there for that as well. Masks are recommended but not required for athletics or activities taking place outside of school hours. North Marion School District indoor and outdoor athletics and activities will continue to follow all OSAA guidance. Schools and athletic programs will adhere to facility capacity requirements for state and local fire marshal regulations. And then we have a link for that. Per OHA guidance, face coverings are recommended but are not required for indoor sports.
For participants.
And I think OSAA has said, while you are competing. And then the minute that you sit down and you're not on the court, you have to put your mask on. Coaches, officials.
Well, that's for participants in the sport, not for the audience.
Yeah, you know, volleyball,
Okay.
basketball, you know. So when you're on the court, you're playing, no mask. But when you're sitting on the bench, cheering your team
So
on.
are those in conflict right now, OHA guidance and OSAA?
No, they're on now.
Okay, the way I read this,
Yeah, well,
they're in
We'll
conflict,
update
so,
the.
okay.
And.
Question?
and if you
Richard?
look-
You have a question?
Oh, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I had a question. Is the district requiring student athletes to and parents, guardians to sign a waiver of liability for communicable diseases?
Yes, that was our practice last year as well.
Okay, thank you.
Was that already initiated for fall sports?
Yes. That was part of the
That was
registration,
required
but
to
in the end,
register.
do you have anything to say about that? You wanna add? Okay, yeah, Mark is handling that, but I remember seeing communication from Mark where we're reminding parents of what they had to turn in, including that waiver was mentioned there as well.
So my question was if a player chooses to wear a mask while he's playing or she's playing, would that be allowed or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Ginger, can you go to things like masking indoor school programs? Is that after school for? I don't understand what that. box
Indoor
is.
school programs?
Yeah,
Well, they're just saying if we're having a program indoors, or after school, that, because the prior rule said that after, at the very beginning when they said masks are required during the school day, but not after school, then they changed it. This is clarifying that masks are required indoors at all times, which is why we're wearing a mask now. So if kids are here after school having a club meeting, they're wearing masks, if they're indoors. They have their meeting outside, they don't have to wear masks.
but the text next to it says all youth under 12, doesn't say
I don't,
everybody.
mine doesn't say that on mine. Maybe that was. All right, I'm looking at page 13 at the bottom.
I'm looking at page 13, third box from the bottom. I don't know, the one that's linked through the agenda. Masking indoor school programs.
Yes, that sentence has been removed from mine,
Okay.
so that must be a prior edition.
I'll get them regular.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure.
Okay.
Well, I'll ask Diane to.
You said page 13.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it is just everybody.
Yes.
Indoor programs.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other thing that's new is the masking school staff penalties. I would rather have someone just like throw a flag, tell me I've broken a rule, but they are so concerned about students and making sure that as many students stay in school as possible, that they are willing to make sure that they have our attention immediately when something occurs. So the masking rule is subject to a daily civil penalty of up to $12,675 to $500 per day per violation. OHA and ODE will refer complaints to Oregon OSHA, Oregon Safety Health, for investigation under the Oregon Safe Employment Act. Oregon OSHA would enforce under the Oregon Safe Employment Act and penalty structure. The Oregon Health Authority has authority, responsibility under ORS 431, A010 for additional action. Licensed educators, including myself, who fail to obey this rule may face additional penalties, including but not limited to loss of license. And that's new, and the staff are becoming aware of that as well as they're implementing. What they do is they implement the law, and then we have to start talking about the impact of the law on staff. We need to talk to staff about that with them. Notification and communication. When schools or departments become aware that a person with COVID-19 has been present in our facilities, we will communicate with identified affected school families and or staff as per the guidelines. We did pre-entry, just like last year, the screening. Staff will follow procedures established regarding observation of students and staff with COVID-19 symptoms. And students and staff as close contacts to a COVID-19 positive case will follow the ODE, OHA planning for COVID-19 scenarios and school guidance as we described earlier. Physical distancing is something that we do whenever possible, maintaining at least 3 feet between individuals to the extent possible. Maintaining physical distancing should not preclude return to full-time in-person instruction for all students. When we're setting up learning spaces, arranging spaces for groups and encouraging at least 3 feet of physical distancing when kids are in activities. Physical distancing of desks, floor markers, and window traffic are no longer required, but personal distance references will continue to be respected. Students with verified exemptions who have not been vaccinated are strongly advised to maintain physical distance, avoid hugs, handshakes, prolonged proximity under 3 feet to the extent possible, in addition to wearing a face mask. Because there will be some students for medical reasons that can't wear masks. Meals may be consumed outdoors to the extent possible, and students, staff, and visitors will be asked to be mindful of physical distancing while they're inside. School schedule. The district plans to open all schools face-to-face at full capacity 5 days per week. For students who must be absent due to illness or school closure due to COVID-19 spread, the district will provide access to learning.
So Ginger, can I ask a question? On the physical distancing within the classrooms, what's the reality that we actually have 3 feet for our students?
Depending on the building and classroom.
Be challenging.
It's
Across all buildings. Okay.
So for the flexibility that the secondary level has is around how to schedule kids. So to the extent possible, they will use that ability to make sure that the cohorts are the size that they need to be. Because again, we have to do what we can do in order to make sure that kids have minimal risk and they can stay in school without disruption. So we don't want to violate that opportunity by shoving too many kids in the room. We're going to work hard at it. And then there's information about vaccination. North Marion School District acknowledges that the opportunity for vaccination is currently only approved for adults and children under ages 12, over ages 12 and over. Additionally, some staff, students, and community members may not or cannot be vaccinated due to medical, religious, or personal reasons. North Marion School District will continue to partner with medical partners to provide space through facility use agreements for COVID-19 vaccination clinics at no charge. The North Marion School District will support communication of COVID-19 youth vaccination clinic information to staff, students, and families. Then the next big thing is ventilation. North Marion School District will continue to ensure effective ventilation and improve the indoor air quality of the schools and facilities by continuing to increase the amount of fresh outside air that is introduced into the system, exhausting air from indoors to the outside, maintaining a climate level that balances comfort and safety within a classroom and building, cleaning the air that is recirculated using filtration methods and HEPA filters, adhering to fire code regulations when opening doors and windows, continuing to monitor air quality during wildfire season and within the buildings, and to mitigate hazardous smoke from the entire building and HVAC system, and air handlers run with the NERV 13 filters. I would also say that the ESSER funds that have been provided to address COVID in schools, some of it has been, they said that we could do facilities improvement in order to improve air quality. So we currently have 2 projects that we are getting started. We're still getting the information. Everyone that's involved in the work having to do with construction and air quality and air filtration systems are very, very busy these days. So getting people out here to give us the information we need so that we can move forward is challenging, but progress is being made. We're doing a significant improvement plan at the primary school, and there are a couple of water coolers for the high school that we also want to replace. They're aging. So so with those federal grants that are designed for that purpose, we can use the money there, and so we're waiting for more information so we can release a request for proposals, so we can get started on that work. If everything goes well, we should have that completed by the last time I talked to Linda about it. I believe it was December. We were hoping. Again, it's going to depend on the availability of people to do the work. Okay. Visitors and volunteers. North Marion School District may allow limited approved volunteer access to essential fully vaccinated masked persons when there is moderate, substantial, or widespread COVID-19 community transmission per superintendent or designee approval. So I'm going to have the principals be the designated people to make decisions about volunteers in your building. And again, we would weigh in, we would consider that decision based on what's going on with community spread at the time that would occur. We also know some of our most wonderful volunteers spend a lot of time at school. Sometimes they're at school after the school day. And during that time, the restrictions are less stringent and things can be done outdoors as well. So we'll continue to work with our volunteers that we consider part of the family, and we want them to be part of things and try to make sure that we have ways in which they can be included and continue to do the work that kids rely on, that teachers need, and that make us a stronger community.
I have a sidebar question. Have we ordered event tents to accommodate the Oregon rain?
What rain? I haven't seen any rain. Anybody's seen
It's
rain?
coming eventually. No, but for real, like, because we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of covered area to provide all this opportunity outside in the midst of the winter months.
And we have some, yeah, that's something to think about.
So, okay.
Ginger, I had a quick question in regards to contractors. Are they also required to be vaccinated to perform work in their school districts? Because we're still going to have contractors coming in and doing work during the school year.
Are coming in during the daytime when students are in the building? Absolutely. Yeah, so that could be a little bit of a hiccup. We'll have to see how that goes. But according to the rule,
Okay. I will let the contractors know.
but the contractors that I have let several contractors know already, but we need to make sure they all know. Okay. Next steps. And I want to remember, hang on to that idea about community spread and understanding what's going on in the community. Because we're going to revisit that in a few minutes. Next steps. OHA has been clear that they will review OAR 333-019-1015 monthly, as it is a temporary rule, and that the agency's goal is to return to local decision making. Masking is one of several layers of protections that we have in place in our schools to help ensure the health of our students during this pandemic. Ventilation, hand washing, staying home, and getting tested when sick, contact tracing in combination with quarantine and isolation, and cleaning and disinfection are also important layers of prevention to keep schools safe. Above all, vaccination is the greatest tool available to fight COVID-19 and to keep students in their classrooms. As such, should OAR 339-019-1015 expire and or become rescinded by Governor by a proclamation and local control of decision-making be reinstated, and the date is 60 days after COVID-19 vaccines have become readily available to students under 12 years old, it would be our recommendation for indoor masking to become strongly recommended rather than required for all students and staff.
So is that our saying that it's 60 days? Or
No,
theirs,
That's their,
their guidance?
yeah.
Who's they? Can we be more specific?
The governor's office would,
This,
said that.
that paragraph you just wrote
Yeah.
was from the governor.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do now is, this is something, is when that happens, that there's that shift to local control, what does that look like in this transition stage? And it's community spread. How do you really address that? What is that? How do you measure that? How will we be able to make local decisions when we're looking for information to be able to do that? And I know that Bill has been working on some things. Bill, you want to come up and talk about that?
Sure, just, thank you, Superintendent Redlinger, and greetings, good evening, board. Thanks for being willing to take on the responsibility of leadership for this at this time. It's a challenge, no doubt about it. And I think some of these next steps statements and paragraphs are designed to foreshadow some of the thinking that we would have to do together, that the board would have to do as you're thinking about what does happen and what do we have to think about as local control comes back to boards and school districts around these things. And this particular piece with a few statements, and I know you've been thinking about this, is sort of that notion of what are the things that we have to take into consideration? What are the variables, that we would want to account for, as we were making decisions about, students safe, it wouldn't be return at that point, but students safe continuity of service and learning and access to quality instruction. And what this does is it kind of shapes or kind of frames, some of those things in terms of, we have vaccines, so that's one variable. And we're pretty sure by the end of October, the adults in the system will be vaccinated. We don't know right now at this point how many of our children attending schools may actually have access to vaccinations at that point. But at some point, we're anticipating that our children, younger children, as well as the older children that we have that are currently getting vaccinations, will have a vaccine available. So at that point, who is vaccinated and the availability of vaccinations becomes a part of the decision-making, just like it did last spring when vaccinations started to become available to teachers and others as well. The other thing, of course, is masks. So there's it's really clear that people would like to get local control with masks, but there is that decision about in terms of safety and continuity of service and learning, about whether masks are still absolutely necessary for all or for a local choice in terms of being able to continue our continuity of service. And so at some point, sometimes it seems like the default is if we don't have to, let's not do it. But actually I might propose that you actually have some, for instance, indoor sports. You always could make a local decision to actually have a higher standard of safety, than what is being proposed. So kind of there's that notion of, if it's a local decision, then it's a local kind of decision on both sides of that. And we do currently have the opportunity to make local decisions that could actually institute a higher standard than the state is providing us. But the other thing that OHA is working hard on right now is trying to develop some metrics again. We remember the metrics that we existed with last spring.
The ever-changing metrics.
The ever-changing metrics. But they're working with some metrics right now, and I think they're using them in some of their thinking and some of their decision-making around some of these, what they're asking us to do or not do. But there could be some metrics available for us that helps us with our community spread. Because as you know, we haven't got into that because the mandates have kind of moved us towards certain practices at this point. But there will be an opportunity to look, I think, a little more closely and, with some metrics that might be common metrics around the state at the level of community spread by county and even, maybe more fine grained than that. So those will be some things that we'll have the opportunity to be thinking about, but probably just really important, kind of high level, broad variables that boards and communities would need to think about when the decision comes back to a local decision. I was joking with Ginger today and say, with local power comes great responsibility, the old Spider-Man thing. And so, there will be continued to be, opinions, on wherever you draw the line, that's where you kind of fight the battle around most of these kinds of issues. And I appreciate the leadership that you've taken. I know you're thinking about this and what kind of a framework could be provided for us, given local control, that actually can help us really make good, solid decisions for our kids and community. So thank you very much. That's again just some foreshadowing. We know that is going to be coming back to us, and we know that we're sort of expecting this to peak about the time we come back to school on the 7th, and we're hoping that our mitigation strategies will start to see that decline. OHA has committed to a monthly review, of metrics and the spreads, and they have said from the get-go that this is not a permanent thing. We absolutely want to get back to put it in our own hands, your own hands, as soon as possible. So again, those are some statements that just sort of frame what some of those variables are and give you some things to be thinking about ahead of time, as those things start to come.
Well, you can definitely count on the OHA for monthly and often changing guidance.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for letting me share a little bit. I did, I did hear, you probably heard today too, that they are hoping to have those rules in place within the next few days. Our plan is due on Friday. So we actually would have until Friday to make some updates and some changes as they come around. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and that whole idea is about local decision making was the key to coming up with a letter to the governor, because I heard so many voices that felt like they weren't part of the decision. And some of those voices who were very loud are very passionate about why they feel the way that they do and why they want either one set of rules or another set of rules. And the individual context for a decision cancels each other out. So how can a community make a decision that impacts the entire community and takes into account how people feel and tries to come up with a decision in a way that addresses the needs of everyone along the continuum? And without the tools to make those kinds of decisions, they're impossible to do. I mean, when I think about our district, St. Paul, and some of the other smaller districts, making decisions using a scale that's set per 100,000 is really challenging to try to explain to people how to use that measure correctly. Is the scale so far off than what our reality is? We need something better. So eventually we'll talk about that. But the rest of this document is appendices and details that are being worked out. We've spent about an hour on this now, so I think it's enough time for this review. And if you have any additional comments about the document, please send them my way. I will make sure that the document that I have referring to is the one that you're looking at, so I will resend it, reshare it with you.
So just a couple quick questions that I wrote down. And this may be something that we need to talk about in a different spot, but I just wanted to bring them up, like, as I've been listening through the community, I think a big portion of it, and I don't know if we covered it in this document, was that parents and students are uncomfortable with the unknown. And so I don't know if it's something that we can request if available before the first day of school, some sort of video, like this is what your day looks like. Because I feel like if you can take that piece away, it would, the anxiety of having to attend a new situation could be better. And then another thing that's often been brought up by numerous even children throughout our community in multiple places is, what is my mask rate going to look like? Because you have this set that's the rule abiders who don't want to be in trouble, and then you have this set that it's going to be really hard for me. And so if we could address those two things before the first day of school, before students enter the building, I would feel a lot more comfortable going into it.
Yeah, they made some great videos last year.
Yeah,
I would include recess time. in
yes,
that for the
and
younger-
lunch.
And
So,
lunch.
In that, this is what your day looks like, I would love like to have a compressed kind of, this is how we're doing lunch, this is how we're doing break. And I know it's gonna be building by building, this is what you expect when you're gonna get off the bus. This is what you're gonna expect when you get to this is, so it's like taking the spiral of, what am I gonna do? What if I do it wrong? Am I gonna get in trouble? Am I not gonna get in trouble? How's this gonna be like?
Yeah, and I think by open house time too, we can, if we have that information, then parents can come and see it too. And of course, the building access is gonna be limited, but they can still talk, get information.
I just had one more thing. When we do talk about the healthcare metrics, I want to be clear that we need to be student-based. Because I see a lot of the metrics coming out comparing our senior populations that are at higher risk. And so I want to make sure that we're not being lumped into Woodburn with a extensively high senior population. I truly want our healthcare metrics, when we look at that for local control, to be child-based.
I had one question, and it may not, I don't know if you can answer, maybe actually building level. When a student is quarantined, sent home, or they need to be sent home to be quarantined, will our online program follow them immediately? Is there gonna be a lag time? And again, this might be building level, but we are gonna have students who probably are gonna need to be excluded from school. And I just didn't know if our online program will follow them with an individual teacher, the teacher that they have. Again, that's building level, because when you're talking about the high school, then you have 5 teachers. When you're talking about the primary, maybe 1. I just didn't quite know if we had that kind of detail figured out.
Well, there's a couple of layers there. One is a virtual online program that people can choose to be enrolled in all year.
Sure.
There is what do you do for cohorting of students? That's a different one. And then for absences, if it's just a single student that's out and not a cohort that's out, how do you handle a student that's been absent for a couple of weeks? Those are the details that are being worked out. I don't know what's finished yet.
We're talking about that.
Yeah,
Okay, because I just didn't, when you have a student who has to quarantine, I don't even know, you don't even know what the time level or time limit is right now.
Yeah.
But are they going to be, behind for the rest of their term when they, when they get back into school? Are they gonna have some follow-up? So are we gonna have a way to reach out to them and get them, homework, lesson plans, that kind of stuff?
We'll be using Canvas as
Okay, so we're gonna utilize Canvas.
There will be two-way, communication with families.
Sure.
And the child can still access their education that way,
Yeah,
if they are up to it, if they're feeling visibly up to it.
yeah, okay, that does reassure me, because I just, we're gonna face that situation. And I just wanna make sure that we don't have this group of students who, maybe get behind by a week and then feel like they can't ever catch up.
Right.
And so.
And we're gonna have clear guidance, I assume, on the penalization for the missing work, late work versus in those avenues. I wanna make sure that we have a lot of flexibility there.
Yes.
So Canvas will be used as the platform in the classroom, and so it won't be like all of a sudden now I have to switch to Canvas while I'm sick. Right, is that correct?
It depends on the level, like in kindergarten, we're not gonna be using
Yes.
Canvas in the classroom.
Right. Okay,
Yeah, that's probably more of a building.
Sure.
Age appropriate, yeah.
okay,
And I know at the middle level, we're looking at, it's a great learning management system. It provides an amazing scope and sequence to class. And it's a great vehicle for being able to see where students are at and give feedback at the moment. And it can be used in class or at home. We saw that last year when we did the hybrid program.
Yeah.
The thing we've been asking ourselves is, can our teachers continue to offer anything like they did last spring with the quantity of students we have coming back? And the answer to that, honestly, logistically, is no. But if a student is not with us present in the moment, the teachers can use Canvas to upload materials and itinerary for the day. And what our interpretation so far of what the attendance guidance says is, if they get in there and they make a substantive effort, then it counts as in class, right? So again, speaking to what Ms. Travis said, if they have the help and ability and they want to get in there and they email and they're in camp, the teachers can see that. It's just like they're in class. So there doesn't have to be any interruption in the learning that occurs.
Yeah, I think that's probably what, at least my, I'm just speaking personally, but just, I think our overreaching goal is to get kids, in an environment where they can hopefully learn in person, but when that isn't a possibility, mitigating the disruptions so they're at a minimum, so they still feel like they're part of the community here, and when they're hoping to come back to school, they, we can bring them right back in, and there isn't major disruptions in their learning process, throughout a term or throughout a, length of time, so.
Goodness says we've had a lot of practice.
Yes.
So are we like 100% sure that will be an option then? Like if a child has to quarantine, there will be. I had a lot of parents reach out, and that's the reason why I'm asking, because they said, well, if they have to quarantine, they're stuck at home. I'm like, no, they're not. So I just wanted to,
Buildings will still be providing.
Yeah. And I knew it would be that way.
Yes.
Absolutely.
so can I just follow up a little bit on the technology piece? I heard you guys specifically say that the middle school each student would have their own device.
Correct.
Okay, so will that be a take home every day kind of thing with them always?
Yep, and they all get sleeves.
Okay, and is that the case in the high school as well? Okay, what about the younger buildings?
We'll have parts of the intermediate school, so it'll be a one-to-one environment in the school, so we won't have sharing of devices, and that'd be the purpose of that.
Okay, but if those
We have to
students,
arrange for a drop off or pickup of technology.
if they're at home for some reason.
It's not sending them back and forth with our little kids, what will happen.
Right, yeah, sure, but there will be a way for them to have the device if they need it. And are we having availability for hotspots for rural?
What about,
Otherwise unconnected?
what about internet access?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will those still be provided for those that don't?
It's a question on the registration.
Oh, okay.
Great, wonderful. This is great. I feel so good about that. Thank you for thinking of that. I just really think it's.
Yeah, we've
important.
been forced to come to the 21st century.
Well,
Muscle this to it.
I feel like that's a huge.
Well, I
that's a
think it's
huge
gonna be
thing.
better for the children if they do have to flex in and out of class at all.
Yeah.
To already have
Yeah.
a process they understand, there's no scrambling with those pieces. The less that we can prevent the anxiety of having to change all that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so to keep us moving, Heidi or Richard, do you guys have any more questions on this particular point?
No other questions here? Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thanks. So you want to move into the draft letter?
Sure. Okay, so, after thinking, well, I talked earlier about moving to a local decision model, and that's something that I've been talking about with people at the ESD and other places as well, saying, we want to make local decisions, but we only have statewide tools. So what can be done to help us learn how to make statewide decisions? We've had some practice with that, and we did the student investment account work, where we had community forums, and we took input, and we used that information in focus groups and surveys to gather information to identify what the community needed, what they were telling us that they needed, and re-examine our services to see what adaptations we needed to make and staffing we needed to add or move in order to meet those needs. So it's that same type of input, discussion, strategic planning, responsiveness, move a decision, review the decision, and getting into that cycle that evolved from the student investment account type work that I'd like to see move forward. So that's the basis of this letter, is we need to move back in this direction, and the sooner the better. So I will read this letter out loud. Dear Governor Brown, the purpose of this letter is to describe the need for the eventual return to local control, to suggest the development of a framework upon which local decisions can be made, and to request that such framework be developed and implemented as soon as possible. The North Marion School District in Marion County includes several municipalities and communities: Aurora, Donald, Hubbard, Butteville, Broad Acres, and portions of rural Woodburn. We are a blend of rural and industrial economies and values. We honor our history and continue to learn about that history through the lens of displaced Native American tribes and the impact of our decisions on others. We also embrace who we are now, a district that is mostly Latinx Hispanic. Despite our differences and the challenges of the pandemic and schools reopening, we are uniting all our diverse families and our students, each and every child, in our common values for creating schools where every child feels safe, welcomed, and part of the community. In fact, COVID-19 has brought unprecedented change to schools, but the North Marion community has been adapting. Our governance models have been adapting too. The student investment account work, high school success fund, and the Oregon Department of Education's plans designed to support all students have encouraged us to have many deep and sometimes tough conversations as a school board and as a community. These talks are valuable. They build trust, engagement, and investment in our schools, and we wish to build upon them by continuing to work with our community as we face challenges ahead. Yet without a path to keep everyone engaged in decisions that affect the entire state, our work becomes more challenging, which is why we are requesting the development of a decision-making model similar to those described in the Student Investment Act and adapted to current problems that can be used to develop local decisions. Gathering input from a variety of stakeholders with opposite views can be challenging, but when aggregated, the community can see how priorities emerge and decisions can be made. We need the flexibility to continue our work with our community, along with the technical resources, in the case of reopening effort and pandemic from agencies such as our county's public health authority, as inputs into that decision-making process. After the current urgency of COVID-19 cases has passed and Oregon healthcare systems are not so heavily burdened, in part through the use of other prevention strategies in developing a more stable model of public health in each locality, then we hope local control can be reestablished. At the same time, I am confident that local control is possible even in crisis situations if the right framework, as described above, is in place. One example I can share from our community is that an initial survey about families' comfort and intention to return to school full-time with masks showed us more than 70% of our families responding to the survey chose to return 5 days a week with face coverings. 15% of our families may continue online for another year. 10% do not want masks but want to send their kids to school. The other 5% are undecided. Publicly and on social media, the impression one might take away is that the majority of the community is not interested in following the guidance from the state. Our data shows otherwise. This is the power of developing local decisions with a model that includes all voices and empowers our local families and school leaders to continue our collaborative work within our communities. It is unfortunate that polarization is taking its toll on local communities. However, we know our community will do the right thing for kids and families if we are provided the opportunity to engage in those conversations. The critical element for us is making sure we capture all the voices, not just the loudest ones, and we are successfully doing this now. Our families are hardworking and care about their district. Our school board and school employees feel the same way. We ask you to return local control as soon as possible with a framework that ensures all voices are heard and one that helps us work collaboratively within our community from values and objectives important both locally and statewide. And that will be signed by us and the school. So that's any discussion about the proposed letter?
I'm giving you first chance to talk once in a while, Chrissy. You always
So
let me
did you
go
put that
first.
resume in this version?
Yes,
Okay, and are you satisfied with that?
I am very happy with this.
Okay. Cause I mean, yours was. Yours was.
What's that? Try not to hog the limelight.
I may or may not. No, I'm quite happy with it. I think it captures what we've been talking about. I think it offers a real solution instead of just, we don't like what's happening, here's a way to change it. I think we have a working system within our community, and that should be acknowledged and put forward as an example and of a way to capture what's going on and make decisions and put into a framework that can work on a local level. So I like that.
You're good with it.
I like this letter and I think it does address a lot that we've been talking about. I foresee that we're, depending on when it's released, coming up on a whole nother piece of very volatile information with the mandated vaccines with our teachers. So I'm fine with the way this is written, but I just also want to know, like when we get to that piece, and I know that we can't really discuss it without having like the clear guidelines in place, that'll have to be another conversation that we have. And that will probably be one that I'll be pretty passionate about working in healthcare with respect for autonomy and biomedical ethics. So.
Heidi or Richard, any comments?
Well, thank you for sharing the letter. I mean, having seen this for the first time, I think this letter does a really good job of recognizing our community and our community's values. I think it acknowledges, the importance of caring for our children and recognizes that as a school board and as a community, we take that seriously. I think it acknowledges also the responsibility that we're taking on as a school board, and expresses a willingness to be a partner and be part of the solution. So I think all of those are really good messages, and I'm comfortable signing on to the letter.
Any comments, Heidi?
Yeah, I would just like to echo the previous comments that I've heard from my fellow board members. And I think this is a well-written letter and appropriate for our community. Thank you, Ginger, for drafting that.
And thank you, Christy and Jillian, for helping finalize the version.
Yeah, good wordsmithing. No, it was really good.
But yes, it was, when I have clarity about where we're at, it's easy for me to put this down on paper. And I committed to this community's success and making sure that it has all the resources that it deserves so that it can do that. It's true. All right, I will, we'll put it on letterhead and have everyone sign it and then send it off.
Cool, great, awesome. Moving along to section C or section 2C, we had a letter of resignation from Sarah Powelson effective August 12th, 2021, which leaves us in a position of having an open position here. We just acknowledge, as a board, we just acknowledge that that resignation and are made aware of it. So I guess I'm going to combine C and D here together, but we are now in the process and we will be accepting applications and beginning in that process, going through those applications and then scheduling interviews for those candidates who are interested in running for that open position. So that will probably be a several-week process. There's some links listed there, and I'm going to refer email traffic. If somebody's interested in going, probably reach out to Diane Lausch, our board secretary. She will have a whole packet that she can email to candidates who are interested in filling this open position. So
the board secretary has sent a message that she suggests that there's a motion to accept the resignation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept the resignation of Sarah Powelson effective August 12th, 2021.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. Christie?
Aye.
Ricardo?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
Chair votes for. That motion carries. She probably wants a motion then on declaring a vacancy.
Yes,
So
please.
I would entertain a motion so that she can do the work that she needs to do.
This is Crystal, and I'll make a motion that we declare a vacancy, posting and review of school board candidates. Is that what you want? I'm reading it off of here.
Probably for position 6.
For position 6.
And this is
And Ricardo's second.
Have a motion, a second by Ricardo. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote on that. Christine?
Aye.
Oh,
Ricardo?
Yes.
Sorry, was that?
oh, yeah, I just wanted to state that on our agenda, we have a link to a document that discusses the roles and responsibilities and a little more information, whether or not you think a school board position is something that you want to do and what does a school board member do. And I appreciated that resource that was attached to our agenda. Sometimes people don't really understand everything involved and exactly what we do and don't do on school board. So that was just a good resource. So thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out, Heidi. Appreciate it. And it is a good resource. So we were mid-vote. I will just continue where we left off. Ricardo?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Hi.
Votes for. That motion carries. Looking ahead, I honestly have not thought a whole lot about a retreat date because I've been doing a lot of other stuff.
I wonder why.
But we will still try and get to that. With that, if there's no other business, I will go ahead and adjourn at 7:23. And we have an executive session for the board members to be part of. We'll take just a couple minutes and then we'll open up executive session.
Do Richard and I just stay on this link then? Hello?
Glenn, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Heidi. Just stay on.